All right, so welcome to the osCommerce lab for our CO246 course. Today we're going to build this very service. So in my virtual machine here you can see the path is localhost osCommerce catalog, and I have a number of products I can buy here. I can select some movies, I can add them to the cart, I can go ahead and look at some hardware that's available here. I can add that to the cart, and finally I can go through the checkout process. All right, so this is what we're going to do today. We're going to install Apache, we're going to install the database, we're going to run the installation files to make this work. All right, any questions so far? All right, so the instructions on how to do that are under the assignments, and I already built this, so what I will do here is I'm going to go ahead and reboot my system, and I will start from scratch. If you already have Apache done, or you're somewhere up the process line, you can go ahead and start from there. As one of the pieces there in the lab, we can also add SSL to our commerce, right? So if you already compiled Apache and you like to add SSL, what you have to do is you have to download the OpenSSL library. All right, let's see. And reset. So you have to download the OpenSSL library, and then you have to recompile Apache. And you can do that. In fact, your PHP module should stay the same, and that's fine, and it should fit in afterwards as well. But I will do it all from scratch, so that way we'll have a record of how this all comes together. All right, so I'll go ahead and let's see. I'll go ahead and begin. Okay, so my first step is going to be to download the necessary sources, and our download site is under radar.grcc.edu, CO246. What I will need is Apache sources. I will also need the OpenSSL sources. I will need the osCommerce, and I will need PHP. Now, for more information about osCommerce, you can go ahead and navigate to osCommerce. I think it's .net. Well, maybe it's .com. Let's see, .com. All right, and you can read more about what osCommerce is. In fact, you can preview under Showcase, you can see the live shops which are running this system. The system is based on PHP and MySQL, which are very common technologies today, and you know, many stores are built this way. Okay, let me turn off this module here. I'm going to go under Tools, Add-ons, and Extensions, and I'm going to disable this extension. Okay. Great. All right, so what's my next step? I downloaded all the files I need. What should I do next? This is our first lab. What would I do next? If you recall, how do we build Apache at this point? What's that? Yes, decompress it, unzip it. In this instance, we're going to ungzip it, and we'll do that with one command. So here are our files. So we'll start with Apache. tar xzbf out of downloads, and this is going to open our Apache source files. Great. Next, I'm going to do the same for the OpenSSL files. tar xzbf on downloads, and then OpenSSL. So now I have OpenSSL and I have my Apache files. Well, at this point, I'll go ahead and navigate inside of Apache, and I'll issue configure -- prefix equals home Knoppix Apache, and further I will say go ahead and enable SSL, and then with SSL -- with SSL is going to refer to home Knoppix OpenSSL. Okay, I think that's all. So let's go ahead and run this part. So at this point we're compiling Apache. Our next step is going to compile PHP like we did last week. Finally, after that, we're going to add the osCommerce files in the htdocs directory. We can delete everything that's in htdocs currently, or will be currently when it's installed, and we'll replace it with the osCommerce PHP files. Then we are going to install the database. Okay, after that we will run through the osCommerce PHP install graphical user interface, and from there we're going to take additional steps. All right, so here we are. It's configured. Now we'll say make and make install. Excellent. Okay, so at this point Apache is installed, and I will run a test by starting it. I would like to run my store on port 80. So to run the store on port 80, who needs to start Apache? Root, yeah, super user. So I'll go ahead and actually I'll open a new tab here, and I'll log in as root, and we'll go ahead and start Apache by saying home Knoppix Apache bin, and then start. And so now if I go to localhost, here Apache is running. Great. So far we did what we did in lab number 1, and then later on we reviewed that in the SSL lab. At this point I'm not going to build my certificates. I'll add that later on. Okay, so my next step is going to be to build PHP. So we'll go ahead and re-navigate to my PHP sources. We'll go to downloads, PHP, open the PHP files, and inside of PHP sources we'll say go ahead and configure this with prefix of home Knoppix PHP. Make sure to use apxs2 from home Knoppix Apache bin apxs. All right, and I believe that we need to add with MySQL. Let's see if our lab called for any other options here. Here was proxy lab. What we said here was configure with MySQL prefix, so that's fine. Okay, well at this point we'll go ahead and fix up the operating system, so just as we did in the previous lab. As a root, we're going to issue apt-get update, and we'll let the operating system do an update. Okay, so at this point I updated my system. I'm going to go ahead and edit the apt-get config file. All right, we'll say here apt cache limit 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, and And at this point, I will say apt-get install flex. And so this is now installing the required library for PHP. Okay, with this completed, I can move on to configuring PHP. Okay, so at this point, I configured PHP. Now I will say make, and then make install, and we'll let it compile for a while. All right, so at this point, I have PHP installed, and my next step is going to be to edit the config file for Apache. And while my load module directive is automatically edit, and load module directive goes to the modules directory and picks up the symbolically linked library. And this is available here under modules, under Apache modules. And here's my library that it was just compiled by PHP. And so that's the first line. And now I will also add under the add type section, or this can be put at the end of the file. That's fine as well. We'll go ahead and add. Let's see. Let's go ahead and I'll just plug it in at the bottom here. We'll say add type, and we'll say application /x httpd php, which is how we're associating the .php extension with the Apache module. Okay, with this in place, I'm about to run a test by creating a file under htdocs called, I'll call it test.php. And in this file, I simply say php info, and we'll go ahead and start Apache. Okay, and I can't do that as my Knoppix user. I have to do that as the root user. Home Knoppix Apache bin start. Let's see how well this is working. This is still running in test.php. Ooh, did not work well for me. Yes. Oh, is that right? It was already running. So if I say restart, that might be a magic touch here. Ah, different, but not there yet. Okay, so I have some kind of a problem here. Let's try, let's see. Let's take a look at my config file. And we're loading the module. That's great. Add type application. Let's see if I misspelled anything here. Add type. Okay, let's see. That looks fine. All right, that looks fine. So let me see what. Well, actually, let's do this. Let's stop it, and now start it. Enable open log. So I'm doing the same thing twice. Okay, stop that, and start it. Now let's look at Topics, Apache logs. Now what do we have for session cache? Okay. There you go. So apparently the restart didn't work. You have to stop and then start. Good to know. All right, so this one I think I caught up with quite a few of you who saved your sessions since last week. All great. So I have PHP compiled, and I will now go to the osCommerce lab. And the first thing we'll do is we'll add a new index file to the directory index directive. So the reason why we're doing it is because osCommerce uses PHP, and developers rely on this index PHP to be picked up out of the crowd and brought as the main file. So that's what we're doing here. We're going to go ahead and say, go ahead and help me to edit the config file. All right, the config file, and find directory index. If you're using LeafPad, you can do that, or some other editor. But you have to find directory index, and we're going to say index.php. Sometimes you will put index.php at the end of this list. You see, the sequence here matters. When both index.html and index.php are in the directory, which one should take precedence? Which one should be more important? And so right now for us, index.php is most important. But you may choose to do something different. A lot of times if you add PHP to an already existing website, you sort of want the index.html to be there because that's what the developers rely on showing up first. All right, so that's the first part. Oh, and then next we're going to create our own php.ini file. You see, php.ini is the file that can change the behavior of PHP. If I was to look at my current PHP info file, it tells me that, hey, the path where I'm looking for config is under home napix php lib. Okay? It oftentimes today will also say, let's just do this, php.ini. Okay, often it'll also tell us where the php.ini is expected, but maybe where it was loaded from. Okay, so right now I can verify what settings are being loaded by saying ls on this directory. And php.ini does not exist there. You see, by default, when you compile PHP, when you install it, all the settings are defaulted. No file is created. So we have to copy a file, and we're going to copy this file per our instructions from our PHP source directory. And the name of the file that we're trying to copy is called php.ini dist, and we're going to copy it into home napix php lib. But we are going to actually call it php.ini. So now we have a way to change settings and save them across reboots of the operating system so they are persistent. Is everybody okay with this step on what we're doing here? We're copying this php.ini file. Okay. Next, we're told to go ahead and edit this php.ini file and modify a specific line. You see, if we don't do it, osCommerce will tell us to do it anyway. It'll say, hey, for me to run correctly, you have to enable these globals. And by the way, globals is an old setting in PHP which basically was very liberal about how variables are created. So if you said $admin, that variable applied not only to something called $admin, but it applied to a cookie called admin, and a URL variable called admin, and and a form, like a post variable called admin. So when you say register globals equals off, or you disable it, then you have to use those long, very specific variables. So older software does not do that. So you have to reset globals to the new setting. And perhaps the newer versions of osCommerce already support register globals in their default setting as off. But the one that I've tested Knoppix with is still requires that we set register globals to on. So we'll do that. We'll just say, go ahead and let's edit our php.ini file and look for register globals. And now this is a text file. I want to remember my initial setting, so I will go ahead and change the rest to on. All right. Most of the time it would be beneficial to add maybe a date here, or maybe even who made the change. All right. Another way of doing this well is you can copy the original file to a directory called old or versions, and then someone can run the diff function to quickly compare them. Exactly. Exactly. That's sort of poor's man of having a versioning system. Okay. If I was to just refresh and register globals, notice that it's still set to off. If I refresh, it doesn't change. What do I have to do for this to go live? Yeah, so I have to restart Apache. Apache will read in php.ini only once on startup. So let's go ahead and go to my terminal, and we'll do a restart. And now we'll refresh PHP, and now register globals are on. More than that, we have, let's see, php.ini, okay, and you can see that now it shows us the actual file that it's loading, php.ini. Okay, everybody with me so far? Good deal. Let's continue. So next, we are going to actually download osCommerce, which I did already, and we're going to unzip it. And I have to unzip it into a very specific directory. Okay, this directory is under Apache htdocs. This is the place where files need to go that you would like to expose to the website. So, first of all, I'm going to clean up the house here. Okay, I'm going to say rm-rf star. Be very careful, please, with this command because it deletes stuff. All right, and so I just want to clean my directory because localhost right now has this welcome page, and you don't want your customers to see that. That just is not a good form. So so we'll go ahead and clean this, and when I do that and refresh, right, it just says, hey, something else needs to be here, and we'll fix this momentarily. So at this point, I'll say unzip from home Knoppix downloads osCommerce, and this creates the osCommerce directory for me. All right. Oh, you know what? I skipped a step, didn't I? Oh, no, it's right now. Number 4, install. No, number 4 was to restart, which we did. Number 5 is to install MySQL server. We're doing that because this system, this website, is going to require a database. A lot of times, the databases don't run on the web servers. There will be a separate server with its own IP address where you run the database. And that's done usually for security too. It's much easier to break into a web server than yet another server that's maybe behind a firewall somewhere. Okay. So I go back to my root account and I issue apt get install MySQL-server. This will only work if you're the root user. And you say yes, say yes. In a moment, I will be prompted to enter a password. I will just press enter because this is my development system. If this was a production system, then you definitely want to set a password and then change it regularly. And then as you change your password, you have to change it also in the config files. So we will just use the root user and no password. But again, this works okay because this is a development system. Okay, so now as part of the installation process of MySQL Server, I'm asked for the root password. I'll go ahead and just press enter. It'll ask me one more time. I press enter again. So that way, this is my development system. I can later on set a password on this anyway, but just so that we are not mistyping passwords later on, we'll just do that. All right, so at this time, my database server is being started. Momentarily, this should say it's all completed. All right, so the installation of MySQL is completed. So my next step here is to navigate the browser, in the browser, to osCommerce, catalog, and then install. Now, if you're doing this on a real server, then for the moment, anybody in the world can navigate to your installation, right? I guess the expectation is that you try this on a development system, come up with some kind of a production system, and then migrate from development to production, or basically, before you open the firewall, you do all this development first. So at this point, it's saying, welcome. If you'd like to install osCommerce, I'm here to make it easy on you, which is great. Let me turn off some of these toolbars. Okay. I have two options now. I can install or upgrade. Now, in this class, we've done a lot of command line, okay? Which is why this GUI is sort of a nice, refreshing approach. Because now all I have to do is just select buttons and boxes and type stuff in. And this is all driven by PHP, right? Index.php is the file we're hitting here because of creating the directory index directive. I'll say install, import catalog. Okay, so with iceweasel, there are no checkboxes. This is checked, this is unchecked. Right, this is, right? Another way to do that would have been, and let me run this as an example for you. I'm going to figure out what my IP address is. I have config, and my IP address is 192.168.188.151. Let's try something here. Settings, netted. Let's see if I can change that to bridged. I'm trying to get an IP address which is available on the outside of my Knoppix system, so I can actually run this whole config on my Windows box. You see, now I'm going to soon get an IP address. The hope is. There it is. Now my IP is 172. So I'll go ahead, go here. I'll go to 172.22.204.173. And look at that. I'm actually accessing from the Windows system my server, which is the virtual machine. I'll then say osCommerce, catalog, install. And now I have this website available through my Windows box, which is great. Also, I have this IP address, which all of us later will be able to use for buying and selling products. By the way, get your credit card ready, and I'll happily collect it from you. Install. And now we have normal checkboxes, so that's, now I remember why we did that. Checkboxes, continue. Database server, well, the IP address for the database server is 172.22.204.173. Username is root, no password. Database name, let's use, I think the lab gives us a specific directive for this. The name of the database is going to be eCom Store. eCom Store, and session storage in files, that's fine. Continue. And it's not liking it. By the way, this is not going to be a problem in your lab, because the default settings for MySQL are you can access the server from the local system. Only I decided to be creative, So I'm accessing my server from outside. So I will run a couple of commands here. I will say something like grant all privileges on all databases to root at all IP addresses, and then no password. Okay, back, continue, still doesn't, can't connect. Let's see. Not on this piece, because that's the external system. Yeah, you're right. I am, yeah, thank you, Jason. I'm making this way too difficult. That's correct. So the local Apache system needs to access the database, not the browser. So the local address will be the same as yours in the lab, which is why the security will work just fine. But I do think that I fixed it just a moment ago. Okay, so we'll run it like it is in the lab. Thank you, Jason. And it's successful. Continue, continue. And notice that part of osCommerce is creating these absolute URLs. So if you call your store with the wrong URL, like, you know, well, anyway, you want to make sure that whatever you type in here is actually routable from your system. Perfect. And I'll say continue. Database server, that's fine, continue. And it says, hey, great, you've made progress, but now we have a couple of issues. We have configuration file, and you'll need to perform these actions. You have to go inside of the config files and run these commands. Okay, you're gonna have to do that. The nice thing is that, of course, these commands are provided for us. So we'll go ahead and do that. We'll say cd home Knoppix. I can actually do that, I believe, as Knoppix. So let's do that. We are in htdocs. osCommerce catalog includes create configuration. Okay, and now chmod 706 on configure.php. And then they say to go to yet another place under catalog admin, go under includes, make sure that configure script exists, and chmod 706 configure.php. Okay, I performed these two, retry, and it liked it. So that's how PHP developers today are able to create an installation GUI out of PHP files, and what the system doesn't give them access to, they give you instructions on what to do. So now I'll go to the catalog, and look at that. I now have a working PHP store. A couple of things that I have to fix right now in this osCommerce store is I have to get rid of these two warnings. I'll do that in a moment. Other than that, you know, you can actually start buying things. And notice that from your computer, you can access my website. If you type in this address in your computer, you'll actually be able to pull up my website. All right, let me pause here for a second, and in a moment we'll fix some. Okay, so now we're going to get rid of these two red lines. Again, the nice thing about osCommerce is that it actually tells us what's wrong and how to fix it. So first it says an installation directory exists at this physical location. Please remove this directory for security reasons. Well, I agree. That's a good thing to do. So you can either remove it or rename it. I would suggest that we rename it in case we ever want to rerun installation, or in production I'll remove it and then keep it stored somewhere in a development system so you can always put it back. How to do that? Well, you go into htdocs. So go under Apache, htdocs, osCommerce, and whoops, where am I here? That didn't work. cd. And now, under catalog, they're complaining about this directory. So I can say mv for move, and you know, I'm going to call it something like ASDF, something very secure, something that no one could ever guess in the world. And when I do that, I rename this install directory, I refresh, and the first line is gone. So they don't care if you rename it or if you remove it, but the default location of it is just not a great idea to keep. So the first one is gone. The second one is I'm able to write to the configuration file. Right? It's called personification. Basically, you have inanimate object taking on person-like attributes. So PHP is able to write the config file, and we gave the rights to do that. Those chmod commands that I ran earlier, those chmod commands were right here. Let's see. Right here. Chmod 706. Those commands allowed PHP to write configuration that we otherwise were using and creating through the browser. And so now we have to undo it. And let's see, do they tell us exactly what to do? Something close to it. So they're calling it, please set the right permissions. Okay, the right ones. Not the left ones, the right ones. And so the way to do that is first we have to go to the file that they are talking about. The file is under htdocs. So home, Knoppix, Apache, htdocs, osCommerce, catalog, includes, and the file is called configure.php. We have read, write, and execute for the owner and read, write for everybody. Now that's not right. That's not correct. So we'll say chmod, change mode, and we'll set something like let's do 755. Well, let's not do 755 because for you that's not going to work. Let's just do 555 across. And so now you can read and execute, doesn't matter who you are, but the write permissions are taken away. So chmod 555 will do that. And so now that I go and refresh, my second error line is gone. And this was the command. It was the chmod 555. 550 would have been fine. 500 would have been fine as well. Okay. Next. Okay, now that we have osCommerce running, and by the way, there's a catalog side to it, and then there's the admin side to it. Whoops. Where's my admin side of it? Oh, it's catalog admin. Okay, so catalog admin. And this interface manages the prices, manages the different modules, tools, and so forth. Okay? So it would be really nice if we could password protect this side of the store. Okay? Do you know of technology that will allow us to do that? How can we password protect this piece? SSL doesn't password protect. If we go back to our labs, yeah, that's the one. In the authorization lab, we created a file with usernames and passwords, and then we used basic authentication to protect this specific location. And so I'll go ahead and implement this in our system. I may not be able to copy and paste. So what I will do here is I'll say, all right, first of all, let's edit Apache config httpd.conf, and we're going to, at the bottom of the file, create a location /important auth name store admins only. And we'll say this is type of authentication basic, and the auth user file is under home Knoppix Apache members.txt. Require valid user, and then close the location tag. Okay, with this in place, I now have to run the Apache bin htpassword file and say go ahead and create under home Knoppix Apache members.txt. Whoops. Home Knoppix Apache members.txt. What am I missing here? Oh, okay, I have to provide the first username. So I'll call him admin, this user. Admin. And I'll give him a password. And now the admin user is created. I just have to restart Apache. Whoops. Gotta restart as the root user. And now, if I go to refresh this, well, of course, see what did I do? What did I do wrong? Oh, I know what I did wrong. I think in my, I didn't change correctly my location. My location is still protecting the important directory, which no longer exists. So this is going to be osCommerce /catalog/admin. Okay, and this is the location. Now let's restart again. And now we refresh, and there it is. So if you are just browsing the catalog, oh, no problem. Buy as you want. But if you like to log in and actually add products or fill the orders, you have to know the admin password, and then you get in. See, so we're putting together the different labs into some kind of a working system. So anything from admin up is now protected. Okay. One more thing I want to change, and that is when someone arrives at this root location, I want them to be forwarded right to my catalog. It's all about selling things, right? So how do we do that? Well, a number of ways we can do this. We could actually use Apache directives to do this kind of forward. We could use mod write or mod rewrite to do some magic with locations. But here's the easy way to do that. And that's something that the developer usually can do. Inside of Apache htdocs, I can create a file. And I'll show you 3 different ways to do that. First one is with PHP. You can create a file called PHP, index.php, and here the PHP code would be header, location, and then osCommerce /catalog. And so what we're doing with the header function is we are forwarding users not through HTML, but through redirection of the HTTP header to a new location. I'm going to see if this works, and then I'll let you copy the code. So there it is. The benefit of doing it this way is that no HTML files are copied. No HTML page is going to be rendered momentarily even. So it's a very effective and quick redirect. If I was to see what this looks like, wget-spider-s on HTTP localhost Notice what it's doing here. Okay, first of all, it's going to say, yes, we got HTTP running, and let's see, text HTML content type. Let's see. Let's try index.php. Okay. I'm looking for the redirection header, but I'm not finding it. Let's see if this changes if I use. What happens if I say 172.22.204.173? Let's see. It's still showing 200. Okay. Okay. Well, skip that thought. Let's just change the way we're doing that. So now, instead of doing this inside of PHP, I'll remove index.php and I will replace it with index.html. So I can't use server-side logic. Right now, I will use script tag to enable JavaScript, and I'll say something like location.href equals, and then I'll put in, and this is of course a relative link. I could have put in HTTP IP address and the whole thing. This is now JavaScript, so that if I go back here, while it looks the same, what actually happens is momentarily a page gets loaded, then JavaScript kicks in and then redirects us. That's the difference. Okay, so JavaScript has to be enabled for this redirect to work. If I misspell location and I go in here, it's just waiting because this is misspelled. But this much has to be downloaded for the browser to redirect. But it's a valid way of doing that, location. And then the third way to do that is with a meta tag, where you say meta refresh, and then you set up maybe less than a second, and then the meta tag kicks in a refresh. It's an old way of doing that. Okay, so at this point I have a working store, and I could follow these directions here on modifying the actual home page. Notice that to change this text, I have to edit this index file. Well, let me do that very quickly. I'll go ahead and change under osCommerce catalog includes, includes languages, English language, index.php, and there's a file that opens up here which is going to have a very long entry. Notice that this file defines the entire language of the entire website. If you would like to do this in Norwegian, you have to find someone who speaks English and Norwegian, send them this one file, have them translate every line of it, and then your entire website is in Norwegian. Right? And so for each language, you have this website. You have this file that defines what each element is going to be called. So text main is this homepage text. I'll go ahead and basically remove it and substitute it with my own, and I'll say welcome to CO246 eCommerce project. We'll close the parentheses, save it, and refresh. And here's my new page without all that gibberish, just with my little comment. All right, well that was pretty easy. Now let's see where you guys are at.